Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. All right, man. Well, we're back from our required bathroom smoke break. And, I wanted to talk about, we talked a little bit about the mission creep and you guys mentioned, hey, the mission was first to get bin Laden and take out the terrorists. And then it kind of moved to this. And then maybe it moved to hearts and minds and the coin operations. And maybe we were really there for nation building. And maybe we were really there because Rumsfeld and Cheney wanted a strategic base in the area. But whatever the mission was, I would love to hear from people that were actually boots on the ground. When you were given your mission and then you got the actual orders, the guidance, the rules of engagement, what were some things that you saw either at the operational level or at the political level where you're like, hey, this is ass backwards. Like, if this is our mission, this is totally counterintuitive. Like, this is where the bureaucracy and the politics and the deep state and the long-term officers take over. I'll probably start with you, Sean, since you were an officer, so you might have a little bit different impression of this. But what were the stuff that you saw at the tactical level, at the supply level, at the brigade level, where you're like, hey, man, this is not helping nobody? Because I think for people that haven't been in the military or worked within a giant bureaucracy like a school district or like a local government, it's kind of like unfathomable to them how badly the bureaucracy can actually get in the way of the mission. So I'll start with you, Sean, since you were an officer and part of that evil bureaucracy.
Hey, there we go. Yeah, I mean, there's probably too many examples to really mention, but as I was kind of thinking about it, I mean, for me personally and the experience that I had, what typified it, and it's pretty well known, again, is the Battle of Kamdesh, which is Cop Keating. If you've seen the movie that came out recently, The Outpost, but is essentially, the location that got overrun or, partially overrun. It was a very tiny, austere base, really at the end of the line, kind of right on the Pac border. They had been probing the location for months, basically in an unbelievably poor area at the bottom of a mountain, basically. So you're surrounded by high ground. I mean, just the worst place to be. So before we actually deployed, before we left to go in country, my commander had briefed his higher ups, the division commander all the way up to, probably the 4-star level, saying we need to close these places down. Very, very, in kind of poor areas, whatever. So we had already pitched that going into the whole thing, got into country, continued to say, hey, we need to close these places down, which was actually in line with McChrystal's overall plan. He wanted to, part of his plan was to get out of these austere locations and move more into the kind of, city centers, population centers. So it was even in line with what we were trying to do from a broader scale. But what screwed it all up was the politics of it. So at roughly the same time, we had this mission come up. It was, Barge Matal. So the local governor wanted us to go up to this tiny little place that, was on the, route of all these insurgents that were coming in and out and everything. And, a 4-day mission turned into, weeks and I think even months at that point. The problem was that was all sucking air power and artillery and all these assets to support that location. And it was all we were just there for political purposes. This was right before the election, I think, which was in August. The election, I think, they stuffed the ballot boxes. I think there was 10 ballots to every one person that was there.
What year was this, Sean?
Crazy. Sorry?
What year was this, Sean?
This was 2009. So around the August timeframe or so, 2009. Just corruption beyond belief. But we're just beholden. And I think that's part of the problem of the whole winning the hearts and minds thing, is you're dealing with these incredibly corrupt individuals. And you're trying to win their hearts and minds, in a way that you think that you're going to win over kind of the country. It doesn't work that way. We can't treat them the way that we would treat Westerners. Essentially, it's just they operate almost completely backwards. But again, we're in this location for political reasons. We're trying to close this place down, but this other mission, this politically driven mission, was sucking all these assets. So what happens is, we know that location, Cop Keating, is set to be closed. So we're not pouring more, we're not investing more, we're not improving our foxholes, so to speak. And one day attacked. It was October 3rd, 2009. They attacked with about 300 insurgents. Again, got in the wire in the Afghan portion of the COP. We lost eight folks that day. I think 27 wounded. One of the worst battles, I think, since the Battle of Wanat. So,
and it wasn't a large group there either, right?
How many?
Yeah, I mean, it was a small group there too, right?
Small. I mean, smaller than a company size. Or this is within our squadron. So their troop, basically. So I think there's maybe like one platoon or so. At that, they did have a supporting location that was on the high ground that was supposed to kind of provide overwatch or whatever. So maybe two platoons, maybe at most.
And for the non-military people, Sean, can you explain that ratio? Like, what's in a platoon against these 300 insurgents? The 300 insurgents, as you said, they already have the high ground. They've already been probing. They already know where all the heavy weapons are. Like, exactly. I watched that movie, The Outpost, and it's so visceral because it's about as close as you can get to hand-to-hand combat without having a sword.
What's better than watching that movie is go on Netflix, and there's a Medal of Honor series, and it actually has and I want to say for Sean, I think what's more, this is a crazy situation, and to have somebody on here that actually has experienced or been a part of that or even around it, it's freaking amazing to talk to you. 2 soldiers received medals of honor out of that battle, and that in itself,
both living too. I think it's the only battle that they're both alive.
That in itself is freaking amazing. So if you have Netflix, there's a Medal of Honor series on Netflix, and it actually has both of them on there. And it's I mean, I can't even have words, and I wasn't even there. I've just watched it. It's absolutely amazing what everybody did there, especially these 2 gentlemen that received medals of honor. And even, there is, I think you guys lost, you said what, 5 or 8 people there.
Yeah.
Every single person, at least from watching the movie in this documentary, every single person laid it freaking down there.
Yeah.
And that's what I was trying to say earlier, is that's why we went to Afghanistan. That's what infantrymen in support and everyone that deploys there. I didn't know that we were at war, if that we were going to Afghanistan when I joined. I just wanted to fight. That's all. And when you're training and you're doing these things, that's what's important. Is you go there, you learn the tactics, you practice, you do it over and over and over again, and you prepare for days like that, like at Cop Keating, and you fight for the people that are to the left and right of you, trying to just rid the earth of freaking bad guys, but more importantly, bringing everybody else that you are there with home. So,
and to your point, Sean, maybe didn't have to go down like that had they had artillery support and air support, but those were pulled away for political reasons, sadly.
Yeah, political reasons. The closure of the COP itself was delayed for political reasons. I mean, 7 months before we even deployed, we're saying we got to shut this place down. We weren't even in country yet, but we're just doing the analysis. Say there is no reason why we should be there. I mean, it's just an incredibly poor decision. But
so they screwed up the evacuation. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it just messed. Yeah. So it was just messed up from the get go, and the end result is eight soldiers lost in one morning, and we ended up closing it right away. We had to bomb it. We left some ammo behind and whatever. So in order to
Sean, go back though to giving like a picture of what we're talking about versus those 300 people. I mean, what kind of forces on the ground?
Yeah. So again, this is just my best recollection, but I think it was less than a troop. So a troop is their kind of company size element, roughly around 100 or so folks. So you have 4 or 5 platoons within a company, essentially. Platoon of guys is 30, 35 guys typically. They did have Afghan army folks that were with them there too. So again, it was kind of separated into 2 sections, because again, I mean, you have these, Afghan soldiers who were turning around shooting our soldiers in the back and all this crazy stuff. So, but they were co-located there. So I think all encompassing, maybe, I don't know, 60 or so guys, on location. Again, 8 KIA, 27 wounded. I mean, damn near everybody had probably walked away with the Purple Heart there. So, I mean, just they were facing overwhelming odds. The heroism there was just incredible. When they finally did get air support, I think they estimated they killed at least about 150 Taliban fighters, foreign fighters. So just a crazy, but it was all political. So I mean, just being able to, again, not kind of going behind anybody's back, but my office was literally outside of the commander's office, and I could hear when he was on the video teleconference talking to the 2-star general, to his boss, the division commander, like having these conversations saying like, sir, we got to get out of here, sir, we got to do this, and just all these political things where, again, we're trying to appease these people that we should never be trying to appease. And that gets back to, like, we should not be doing the nation building thing. We need to do our mission, and that comes first and foremost, and we'll support you to fight your own fight. But that means, a minimal investment on our part and everything. But when you got all these competing elements, that's when things just go, crazy.
Yeah.
I think that to me just really kind of typified it. Again, I was pretty far removed from, the front lines, all that kind of stuff, more of a FOBBIT, but understanding at that level, that level of, political garbage, it was a pretty interesting experience.
Sean, can you explain to the non-military people what a FOBBIT is? Because this is one of my favorite all-time terms in the military.
Yeah.
Okay. So first you have to explain what an FOB is, and then explain a FOBBIT.
Yeah. So FOB, FOB, forward operating base, and then folks who are like me, support mainly. I mean, I hardly ever left the wire. I did get some opportunities to go into the city and go to some dinners and banquets or whatever, but 95% of my time in theater was on this very large base. So brigade level, which I was at, that's about a 4,000 person organization. So we had the headquarter element there. So this was Jalalabad. This is the same place that they did launch the Bin Laden raid out of about a year after I was gone. So the other side of the airfield was where they have all the secret squirrel guys, SEALs and everybody else. So, so a lot of fun stuff kind of going on there. Pretty much all of my time. So, the phrase is, FOBBIT instead of a hobbit. You're just kind of staying on base, man. I was working out, every day, sometimes twice. I mean, just nothing else to do.
I've seen some pictures, dude. You were ripped. I've seen some past pictures.
Back in the day, man. Yeah, back in the day, it was good times. So.
No, but it's so funny because FOBBIT is a term that was relayed to me by a friend who was a ranger, and I think he kept a little diary. He had 230 helicopter flights in Afghanistan, and he's like, one would be there, one would be back. Sometimes the mission would be canceled, but he's like, I lost count, but with 230 helicopter flights, that had to be about 100, forward operating missions where they were either pulling the trigger or somebody was pulling the trigger at them. He's like, so you just end up having this disparaging term for people that sit in the rear with the gear, where it's like, we started calling them FOBBITs, and it's like, they're not doing shit, man. They're not getting shot at. And it's funny, the resentment between the people in the rear with the gear and the guys that are actually pulling the trigger. So Nathan, you kind of alluded to this with your rules of operation, but what were some stuff that you saw at the bureaucratic or political level where you're like, this is completely counterintuitive to what we're trying to accomplish out here in the field when I'm getting fucking shot at?
Yeah. So, it's just, it can be really frustrating. So like I said, the difference between my first deployment, my second deployment was pretty drastic, where first deployment being super kinetic, gunfights, freaking rockets, all that fun stuff. And even then it can be difficult, so you have free reign to do a lot of things, especially when it comes to shooting mortars or just shooting, period. It's like, okay, I can see there's a bad guy that's over there. You can tell it's a bad guy. Like, you have no business being there, but I can't shoot you because a checklist has to basically, you got to fulfill a checklist. You have to we call hostile act, hostile intent. I can't shoot you off of a hostile intent. It has to be a hostile act. And that's frustrating because that's like, if you have a knife and you sit there and say, I'm going to stab you. Okay, well, I can't do anything because you're just telling me, even though I see it, you have to make a move towards me. And then as soon as you make a move towards me, then it's now considered a hostile act. So that started to get frustrating when you know people are getting hurt and you know bad guys are there. And it's just like Sean saying, the political aspect of it is, well, we're trying to appease people and we're trying not to have collateral damage. We're trying not to make mistakes here, but it's almost like at what cost is do I try not to make a mistake, and then by me doing that somebody gets hurt, because that's what's going and what will happen, right? But more so the political aspect was, again, for me it was this poppy stuff. It was this poppy eradication, basically trying to rid poppy fields, so we slowed down the production of opium and things like that. One, I had no idea it was even there. I didn't know it was like that. I remember my first time I saw it. For those that don't know, like, blossom poppy fields look beautiful. Like, they're pink flowers everywhere, and you don't realize it, but they're everywhere. So imagine you're driving down the road and you see these farms and you see all these cornfields. Well, again, multiply that by like 10, and it's drugs. Like, drugs everywhere. Everybody's seen Ozark, I imagine, and they had a poppy field. Well, that was about this big in comparison to a neighborhood, what we have going on there. And it's when you kind of start realizing that, like, it's a pointless thing that we're trying to do, that we're trying to convince these people to grow something different when it's their livelihood. It's what literally keeps them alive. One, from the Taliban, and two, from a financial aspect.
We glossed over it, but you said it was like 90% of the opium in the world comes from Afghanistan, and I think it's like 50% of their GDP too. So it's, I mean, it's enormous.
So, and that's the thing that a lot of people just don't understand about Afghanistan is, and again, you call it conspiracy or whatever, but there is a lot of control. There's a lot of money. Drugs are money, and people want to control that. So that's what we were trying to do. We said we were trying to control the production of it, but I feel it's just more of like trying to control it in a way that we as Big Brother can kind of control it.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, it's interesting.
And at that point, you're kind of like, all right, what are we fighting here? Like, are we fighting terrorism, or are we fighting drugs, or like, is it is it together, or what's really happening? But again, even when it came to certain things, just shooting at people, so what's another frustrating thing there is, if we're getting shot at, you see a guy with a gun, he sets it down, I can't shoot you no more. And then because he's not hostile anymore, although you were literally just shooting at me. And so there's those aspects were really frustrating, because it's like we have to we give them every opportunity to hurt us, and we can't do anything really to protect ourselves in that manner. So the stuff that kind of Sean's got, again, he has such a much larger scale, I would say, perspective than I do, because again, I'm freaking ground pounding, slinging freaking bullets at people. Yeah. Robbie's out there snooping and pooping, doing all kinds of crap that he's mostly probably only told us.
Mostly but Nathan, I think your experience is so important, because what I'm envisioning is you're rolling along on patrol, you see guys setting up, you see guys, solidifying their position. You see guys who you are going to have a firefight against, but until they shoot at you, what it sounds like you're saying, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, they're solidifying their position to fight against you and kill you, and you cannot attack them until they fire the first round. Is that a fair assessment?
Essentially, yeah. And then, even with snipers, like, we have to catch you digging a hole. Mm-hmm. You gotta be... It's got to be like, usually like nighttime, you got to dig the hole. You got to put the freaking charge in there. I got to see that it's wires. I mean, like, you have, I know you're putting a bomb in the ground. It's obvious. but I have to report it all back. And then someone has to say, all right, go ahead and shoot his ass. But like, do I need to go through all of that? Because by the time you give me clearance, you're gone. The guy's gone. Same thing with artillery, same thing with mortar, same thing with all these other things. It's like we're almost letting these people put these traps in place, and they're probably going to go do it again. And I could just rid you right now, but I can't. A huge thing for me is my first deployment is really kind of it's personal here, but it's like a guilt trip thing, like kind of PTSD issue. Is my very first firefight. I remember seeing this group of people on top of a building, and we're in a gunfight with Taliban, and there's this group of people that are sitting on top of a building, and they're dressed in all black. I can see somebody's got a cell phone, and they were most likely spotters, basically communicating with the Taliban, telling them what we're doing so they can adjust and stuff like that. At the time, they don't have a weapon. I can't do anything. And I remember sitting there watching them, and I could see that they're just reporting. And I had my light machine gun, and all I wanted to do is just sit there and just Swiss cheese these motherfuckers, right? Because I know that you're bad, but I can't prove it. It had been 2-3 weeks later, my buddy got his head blown off. And I've always sat there and thought, I'm like, dude, what if, because it was very close, it was around the area that we were at. It's just like, what if one of these fucking assholes put that bomb in the ground, and I know that they're bad, and I couldn't fucking shoot him, and now my buddy Poole just got decapitated. So it's frustrating, things like that. Granted, it also is, it's the way of war, and that's just how it is. But it's stupid shit like that. That's we're sitting here, we're playing freaking happy next door neighbor with drug dealers. We got guys that are over there that are bad, and all you want to do is just shoot them because you're bad, and you can't. So not so much the political side of the ballot stuffing and all that went on, I'm sure, but mine was more just dealing with the people right next to me and bringing them back there. So those were some frustrating parts of that I dealt with.
Yeah, man. Thanks for sharing, because I know that's not easy to recount. So
more to talk about that, easier it is. Like, the happier it is.
I'm glad. Yeah. I'm glad. And Robbie, did you see, because you were attached to a special forces command, did you see less politics where they had more range of motion, or did you see more politics because they were more of the tip of the spear forward operating? Like, what are some things that you saw politically or bureaucratically where you're like, man, why can't we just make this call? Or why can't we let them, why can't we let the Nathans of the world? Because, it's funny, you guys all served at similar times. So there's a chance Sean was bringing in supplies to give to Nathan to go shoot bad guys that Robbie's was reporting, intelligence on. And I know at the time you guys served, there was like 100,000 people in country. So that's unlikely, but there's a chance all of you guys affected each other. So, Robbie, what did you see that drove you nuts as far as like, this is not a good decision?
So it's crazy. I think it depends a ton on not as much for Nathan. They were way more constrained than we were. So we had politics, but we also had a lot more leeway. And my first commanding officer when I was in Afghanistan, who rotated out halfway through, was just a wet blanket and was awful. My second commanding officer, made me want to re-enlist. I had already decided to not re-enlist. And that's a really funny thing too about the military. If I could have made my re-enlistment contingent on being underneath certain people, I would still be in. I'd be putting in, I wouldn't be putting in 20. I'd be putting in 30 or 40. But so I would say, the first thing I would say to what Nathan's talking about is it's absolute BS that in my position, if I screwed up and we hit a bunch of people who weren't actually bad, nothing was going to happen to me. And I had 1,000 more times intel on all of these people than he did. And yet he's expected to act with more restraint. Also, I'm up in the air. Like I'm I'm far more vulnerable to our maintenance crews of my aircraft than I am to any of our enemies. And yet, like, they're waiting. You know, it's like if you had a home invasion and you had to call your lawyer first and get your lawyer on the line and be like, hey, can I fire back at these guys? They're invading my home and they're threatening my family. I mean, it's really just crazy. And the rules for grunts, especially in that period, were just awful. And it reminds me of an analogy that I just love, and I'll kind of paraphrase it here with my own thing. But imagine you're going to a formal event with your significant other. And, you know, we always say compromise, we treat it as such a positive thing. Sometimes it's the worst of both worlds. So imagine you're going to a formal event with your significant other. You think your tuxedo would look really, really cool with your Yeezys. And she's like, no, just wear your black dress shoes. That's what you're supposed to wear with a tux. And you say, all right, we'll compromise. I'll wear one of each. That's actually the worst of all possible options, to wear one black dress shoe and one Yeezy. And that's what we were doing with this strategy, this coin strategy. You know, McChrystal called it courageous restraint, and it had to be all or nothing, but we did it as a half measure, and it ends up being way, way, way worse. So courageous restraint is kind of what Nathan was talking about, where you're there to win the hearts and minds. So, you know, you're going to increase the risk to you and your friends because you're there to tell the populace, we're here for you. We're not going to just be like going crazy. And in that scenario, I think you have to do that from the very start of the war. You can't just start midway and be like, okay, now we're going to be the super good guys and you're going to love us and you're going to love America and we're going to convince you all. But if you are going to do it, you have to have a special force that's trained for that, for winning hearts and minds. You can't have a force that's trained to go stack bodies and then go tell them to be 75% diplomat, 25% body stacker. If that's what you're into, if that's what you think is going to win the war, you have to train up that force. You cannot. It's absolutely insane. It is wearing the one Yeezy and the one dress shoe with the tuxedo. And it doesn't work, and it causes a ton of problems. So I think that's totally insane. I don't know. As far as stuff that I saw in Afghanistan, I was I probably can't tell this story, but I will anyway. I brought a Kindle to Afghanistan with me, loaded with a bunch of books, because the secret squirrel fob I was on, we couldn't even have Wi-Fi. They literally had people who would walk around with Wi-Fi sniffers, making sure that nobody was broadcasting anything. I mean, it was locked down. And so I brought this Kindle full of stuff to read. And before a mission one night, I'm reading Civil Disobedience. Probably a bad choice while you're doing the man's mission. So I'm following this target who, is legitimately a bad guy. We know he's a bad guy. And a shift change happens down in the Tactical Operations Center. And it's this Marine colonel who takes over, who I know is trigger happy. And this is during this courageous restraint where we're trying to win the hearts and minds. So this high value target walks into this big building. We have eyes on the target, so we follow him to the building. And it's big. And the colonel comes over the radio and he says, confirm our target has entered building on screen. And I sat there for like 20 seconds without responding because I didn't know what to say, because I know he's going to blow up this building that we don't know who's in there. And so I finally come back and I said, confirmed, target is in the building with unknown number of civilian women and children. And these radio conversations are recorded for after action reports. So in case something goes wrong, they're going to review that, and then they're going to kick the ass of anybody, whoever was responsible for making the mistakes. And I could just hear the anger coming back over the radio when he came back and said, "Roger that, hold tight."
Yeah, because you're an E4 who basically just shit on the plans of an 06.
Yes. And also, the other side of this is, so this was a guy that we knew was basically an IED expert. We knew he'd killed a bunch of our guys. And so as I'm making this call, my call is, how do I rate these civilians who we don't know whether or not they're in this building versus losing this guy? And then, I basically my thought is this going to be something that I have nightmares about for the rest of my life? Because then he kills our guys for weeks and weeks on end afterward. And luckily it didn't end up that way. Luckily he left the building and we followed him up into a rural area where nobody else was, and we got him. But those kinds of things just, it didn't make sense, these half measures that we had. And I feel like that's the entire story of Afghanistan, is half measures, is you think this strategy will work, this other general thinks that strategy will work, so let's do a compromise, and let's do one Yeezy and one dress shoe, and we'll go from there. And that didn't make sense at all.
The problem when you have something like that going on, and I can tell you from experiences, it's the half, I think what you said, the compromise and the dress shoe analogy is great, having 1 foot in, 1 foot out kind of thing. When you do that on the level that I was on, you're kind of just like fucking with infantry Marines, where all we do is train to fight, right? That's what they hammer into us from boot camp, and then you go into the infantry world, and that's all propaganda, and we're trained killers, because that's what our job is. And then you dump us into these situations where we have to restrain ourselves. And then when we restrain ourselves, people get hurt because we had to restrain ourselves. And now what happens is emotions start coming into play when you don't want to necessarily fight with emotions, which can cause further collateral damage. And it absolutely happens because we're humans. We're humans, and we can't not have emotions for shit like that. So when Poole died, that was actually our second company death. And from that point, our commanding officer, who had already been to Afghanistan in like 2005 or something, some early on when they were really putting in work in the mountains and stuff, lost half his company. Now we're out for freaking blood. Now Marines are going to go do their thing in a time when we're really we have to be constrained, and we have to focus on the grander scheme. But because you've put us in this cage, and we're going to break the freaking lock open. And when we break and we're going to do a fantastic job at it, we're going to make a glorious mess. But when we do that, people are going to get hurt. So after that, we did a census, which was we cleared everything in our area of operation. We blew through every single house, cleared every single freaking room, searched everything. I mean, we tore apart little rooms to a point where I almost, and I'm very happy I realized what I was doing. I almost threw a baby out of this carriage thing because I didn't know it was in there. I'm going to put that out there. I didn't know it was in there. Okay. Because it just didn't make sense where it was at. But when you're doing when you're putting these people in these positions to where people are getting or can get hurt, and then they do get hurt, we're gonna want to react. And it's just like what, and when we react, we're gonna see black or see red or whatever you want to call it. And that's not good for anybody, because someone's gonna get in trouble and someone's going to get hurt, and then someone else is going to have to be held accountable.
That's where everybody ends up in CNN, right?
Marines are a demolition team. You can't hire a demolition team to go do a demolition and then halfway through say, you know what, your job's to build a house now. That's just, it's crazy. And it's the people, the worst part of it is it's not the people making the policies that suffer the consequences of that. It's the people on the ground. It's the people doing the things that they were trained to do who end up suffering the consequences of following their training.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most nonsensical things to me as far as it goes. I mean, there's that dumb movie from the 2000s and based off of a poem, but it really is like, I felt like it is, the movie was called, Lions for Lambs, and it's from a poem that just describes these British soldiers who fought like lions, but all their the people giving the orders were a bunch of lambs. And it's really sad that to me that it's not the elites, it's the grunts who suffer consequences. They're the ones who are always in the most danger. They're the ones who are operating under the training that they were given, and yet it's those grunts who suffer the consequences if they're all of a sudden told, hey, guess what, we're doing win the hearts and minds now, we're not doing kill anymore, so act accordingly.
Be a totally different person.
And it's that, and it's kind of, it's like that in a lot of the times. And Sean might be able to know a little bit more, just because, again, having the officer side, having the higher command side, that's why I keep saying his perspective is different, because when you're on the commander side, you have the information that we necessarily don't, and the plans that we don't, but for whatever reason, it doesn't like to get completely shared with us, because it's more of shut up and do your job.
Right.
And then when we're doing our job, and then it's like, all right, now do this, it gets so confusing. And that's really what it seemed like in Afghanistan, was especially from 2009 2010, my first deployment, it was just hammer these people, just hammer them, because we were surging back. That's what we wanted. Go back all of 2011, very, very different, especially when you have a lot of guys from my first deployment where we just knew it was just nothing but kinetic shit. It literally, we took place of a freaking invasion, and the next time we're just like, well, fortunately I was a sniper, so our job was a little more sexy and fun. But for a lot of the just the regular grunts, it's okay, now just do security patrols, and that's all you're gonna do. Don't shoot anybody. You better not shoot anybody. So it's like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Wait till your best friend gets hit before you shoot back.
Yeah. I think we could stay on this point and pull on this thread for about 4 more hours, but I do, for anybody that's still listening, I do want to move on to, I know, obviously, from talking to the three of you before we jumped on this call, all of us think that, and this is not a partisan political issue, but it's just a fact, Biden completely fucked up with the withdrawal. It's all screwed up. It's all a mess. We're recording this on, I don't even know what day this is, August 23rd. There's still 10,000 or tens of thousands of Americans still stuck in Afghanistan. There's probably hundreds of thousands of people who did want to fight for the Afghan National Forces, or translators that were willing to give their life who are stuck in country. There's obviously women and children. And, something I don't think I could have appreciated until I was a father is some of those pictures at Bagram Air Force Base where, let's be clear, even the more progressive Muslims who wanted to rebuild the country under a different kind of mantra, they're still Muslim. You can't be more diametrically opposed than being a devout Muslim and having a Christian, presumably Caucasian soldier, and seeing these women hand their babies over the fence. Like, I can think of nothing more dramatic than giving my child away. And we don't have to get into all the politics of what's going on stateside here in the United States. But, you know, when college students are talking about words are violence, and if you have to accidentally call me he or she, that's violence. It's like, no, imagine being so terrified of your own countrymen that you would hand your baby over a fence to somebody who probably moralistically is diametrically opposed to you. No clue what's going to happen to that child, but hopefully there's a better chance for that baby than what's coming for you in your own country. Like, that to me was so heart-wrenching. I told my wife I couldn't work for a day. Like, after I saw those pictures, like my gut was turning. I was like kind of emotionally a wreck, and I didn't even serve in Afghanistan. I never got shot at in anger, but just seeing that, I was like, holy shit, this is what these people are about to deal with. So, you know, in a perfect world, Nathan, Sean, Robbie, if you were advising on the withdrawal or you were helping managing with the withdrawal, whether you think that was a good or bad thing to withdraw in totality, you know, what do you think should have happened, could have happened? What do you think can happen now? And again, Sean, maybe we'll start with you with kind of the officer perspective, because you had a bigger picture and you were at Bagram Air Force Base, which we apparently, and like, you know, who knows what's sensationalism and who knows, you know, it looks like we just like left Bagram, left the national forces to be on their own. We released 5,000 prisoners of like the worst kind. And then we turned over $80 million of planes, tanks, Humvees, small arms. It's just like, how is there not a plan? I mean, you see this in every movie. It's like, oh my God, the base is about to fall. Let's blow up all the sensitive equipment. And now we're seeing pictures from the Taliban of like storage containers full of M240 machine guns and AR-15s and night vision goggles. It's how we've now appropriately armed the enemy, if we ever have to go back there, to fucking kick our ass. So it's like, and again, this is not a partisan issue. I'm not saying Trump would have done this any better than Biden. Obama would have done this different than Biden, although we kind of have proof that they didn't do it as poorly as Biden. What do you think should have been the exit strategy, assuming we were going to exit? And Sean, I'll go to you first.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's no reason for it to be hasty, essentially in any way, right? So Biden was handed over, I think, you know, dealing from a position of strength. Trump drew down, had Taliban at bay. You know, conditions based, I think, is obviously central to that. Yeah, I think that's the one of the only ways I think you can prevent what happened, right? So, you know, drawing the line in the sand, and as soon as you step over this, we're going to schwack you and we're going to set you back, you know, 100 miles, you know, before we start to go at this again. So that aspect of, you know, deterrence, you know, I think is really important. But I mean, just you look at what we're learning almost daily. I don't see any possible way for them to have screwed this up worse. From an order perspective of who, you know, there's no reason why. I mean, I think the ambassador asked to be shipped out of there like before anybody else. I mean, just like everything was almost the exact opposite of what should have happened, right? The embassy folks should have been the last people out. They should have been help facilitating everybody else out. Yeah, I mean, not closing down Bagram, that airfield. I mean, it has so much more capacity than, you know, Kabul, from an airport perspective. So, you know, it almost begs the questions like it's as bad enough to say like it's almost on purpose. Like that's how bad it is. Like you can't imagine like why we are doing what we're doing or why we're not doing anything more.
And for perspective, because a lot of people obviously don't know the geography of Afghanistan, how far away is Bagram Air Force Base that we had fully secured? 30 miles. 30 miles. So
30 miles, yeah.
Do you think there could have been a situation where we held Bagram Air Force Base and it wasn't a helicopters on the roof? It wasn't, you know, the next Saigon, as a lot of media people are calling it, where we, you know, extracted thousands or tens of thousands of U.S. citizen Afghan nationals that wanted to come here who had been vetted? Was there an opportunity to do that in Bagram before we just said, all right, peace out, we're done? Like, what was 100%.
that? 100%.
Okay. Like, I didn't know if that was 100%. Tactically possible.
The 30 miles is even, so like probably like 30 miles from Hamid Karzai Airport. But Bagram is basically in Kabul.
Okay, so we could have secured that and said, hey, this is our stronghold. We're going to extract as many people as it needs. And then, last flight out of Dodge will be the Delta Force guys or whatever. I'm making shit up in my mind. I'm thinking of this like a movie, but it would have been possible. It's not like Bagram was 200 miles away and the Taliban was about to overrun it. We could have held that and extracted people. That would have been a logistical possibility.
Yeah, I would just say too, because Bagram was one of the places I was stationed. You have a lot more opportunity for comings and goings of aircraft in Bagram. Hamid Karzai Airport is one runway.
One
runway.
Yeah.
That is one mortar round from being shut down completely right now as we speak.
Yeah, I mean, Burbank Airport.
And not nearly as protected as Bagram Airfield.
Right.
I mean, you had these T-walls, these giant concrete walls protecting the entirety of the airfield at Bagram Airfield.
And how many airstrips are at Bagram, roughly, if you had to take a guess?
Handful, 3 or 4 probably.
Yeah, probably 3 or 4. But they're
multiple helipads. I mean,
they're separated in a different way than a traditional airport. But yeah, like it would have allowed for a lot more.
Got it.
So much more. So we can talk all night about how this thing was screwed up. What even boggles my mind more at this point is it's undeniable. I don't care what side of the aisle you are, like where you live in the country, the world. Like we messed this up. Why aren't we doing more now? Why aren't we inserting a force to retake Bagram Airfield right now that isn't surrounded by Taliban insurgents? You prevent them from setting up any checkpoints. You say, hey, everybody come over here. We are going to guarantee you safe passage. Like, why aren't we doing these things? Why don't we own, like, hey, anybody could have screwed this up. Sure. Like Trump could have done the same thing. Who knows? But why aren't we doing more now? That's what really probably infuriates me more than anything, is take ownership of the screw up and fix it. But we are rapidly approaching this August 31st deadline that the Taliban has already said they will not extend. Biden can say all day, hey, we're going to extend, into September, and Taliban has already said no. And if you do, there's going to be consequences. So
if only
moving into what are we going to see happen and what's going to play out. I mean,
if only we had a whole battalion of Rangers where their specialty was overtaking airfields. I mean,
right?
For anybody that doesn't know this, just Google or read the Wikipedia article on Rangers. There's thousands of troops standing by that their whole mission, their priority mission is to take over airfields and secure that because of how important that is. To your point, Sean, we could unleash a battalion of Rangers and a bunch of Marines, Nathan, just to give you some credit, onto Bagram Air Force Base.
We'll do better.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, we got combat controllers in the Air Force too.
That's
there
all
you
I
go.
was say.
Doing the same.
CCTs is literally a CCT's job. A combat controller in the Air Force. Air Force has special operations for those that don't know.
Yeah,
that is literally their job. I want to give I have a different. I have a different perspective. I don't know what you want to call it, but obviously when I listen to President Biden's speech, and I do say President Biden, just like I say President Trump, just out of respect to the position, because guess what? I'm Nathan Nix. I'm a loan officer, dude. I am not the president of the United States. Right. So, when I listened to his speech Monday or whenever it was, I think I thought the same thing as what most people thought was, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, what are you saying right now, man? But I actually went back and listened to it, and I was inclined to agree to a handful of things that he was saying. Was it? Should we have done it as quickly as we did? Maybe not. But if anyone has time, Jocko actually just released this video, basically saying how he would address the country if he was president. And I think it's very good. It's extreme ownership, basically saying, "Hey, I fucked up, but what we're going to do now is." We're going to go get everybody. And if you try to prevent it, we're going to kill you. And that's, is that what needs to happen right now? Yeah. I think we just need to clean sweep, get everyone out. Could it have been prevented? I don't know. I don't really know. And it's very hard because if everything that we really had at the time said otherwise, said that this wasn't going to be an issue, then is it who, is it really anyone's fault? Did anyone expect for this entire country's military to just roll over? Now, I could have told you, yes. Yeah, no shit, because I have literally lived next to them and could tell you, I think that they are absolute, like, just an atrocious military. But if you haven't done that, and if you're the president, you have all this intel, you got people like freaking Robbie doing all the crap that they're doing out there, getting all this information stuff. How do you really
They're not listening to that.
Well, clearly.
Yeah, because Seagar, the special inspector general for reconstruction in Afghanistan, Afghanistan reconstruction, whatever that acronym stands for. The past, if you've listened to, if you've read at all, anything coming out of there, it all pointed to this. And that's why actually I don't blame Biden. I'm the odd man out here where I don't think Biden is the problem here. I think it's people like General Milley. I think it's people who are telling him the things that and I don't think they're just telling him the things he wants to know. I think they're playing politics, and I think they were telling him what they want him to know, what they thought would make him stay. And I think when they're talking about the abilities, and they're exaggerating the abilities of the Afghan National Defense Forces, especially undercut from like all of our abilities that they depend on. We trained them to work with us, not to work independently.
Yes,
correct.
And so I think when we're exaggerating, when Biden has an exaggerated interpretation of their abilities. And by the way, I didn't vote for Biden. I actually hate Biden, but I'm just willing to I don't think it's his fault here. I think there were people who were saying things that were from the old playbook of, hey, we've got this incremental progress happening now, so it's not the time to leave. And I think they expected him to say, oh, well, maybe we should stay a little longer. And I really think, I mean, you take, Raytheon, Boeing, and Lockheed, and General Dynamics, and all these people where their profits over the course of the Afghanistan war have increased from between 300% and over 1,000%. You think about that kind of money and the kind of incentive there is to stay and to prolong the program. And I think the intel being fed to this like half sentient president that we have was for the purpose of him saying, oh, well, so I guess if we wait a little longer, things will get better. And I think what they didn't expect, for whatever reason, maybe it's because he was, maybe it's because of his kid, Bo, who, for those who don't know, there's a lot of screwed up crap in the military. And one of them is these burn pits that they'd have people go and stirring toxic crap while they burned it. Yeah. And his son got cancer and died, and it's most likely because of those burn pits. And so maybe this is personal to him. I don't know what the reason, but I really think they were feeding him intel that would, that they thought the most likely outcome was that he was going to say, let's stay a little longer. And he ended up just saying, let's just pull out.
Yeah.
And he did it based on their intel. And that's why it was so screwed up. And they are now scrambling and trying to figure out what to do because they fed him horrible intel that, I mean, Millie knows. He's testified before Congress to a lot of things that are different than he told Biden. I think if anything comes out of this, I hope that guy is thrown in goddamn Leavenworth for the rest of his life. Just a piece of crap human being. And for those who don't remember, you might remember him testifying before Congress that his, what he was fixated on while all this was going on was understanding white rage. Yeah. I mean, like he's
a fucking break.
Yeah. He wants to make sure that, the U.S. soldiers, instead of instead of learning how to identify IEDs, we got to make sure that they know the ins and outs of critical race theory. He is just an absolute monstrous piece of crap of a human being. And I throw the blame at him and his ilk and people like him, and not people feeding Biden selective intelligence that he decided to act on.
It would be interesting if the one courageous, coherent decision Biden made in his entire administration thus far was to rip the Band-Aid and pull out of Afghanistan. And it just turned out that was the wrong decision because he was getting horrible intel. I mean, it would be ironic if the one moment that he wasn't just completely senile eating ice cream 3 times a day was this event, and he was just getting bad intel, which is like kind of an argument against the whole deep state thing.
Nevertheless, though, like what people need to see right now is the guy take ownership.
Yeah.
Because ultimately you're the leader of the free world. You're the president of the United States. There is no one on this planet that has a more powerful position than you do. And you made a wrong call. You made a wrong call that people need to hear. You know, I didn't vote for Biden either, but the guy, God only knows what's happening in his brain. But what people need to see to gain confidence, because I feel like he has just been destroyed in so many people's brains as far as confidence goes, in his leadership skills. Like, he just needs to take ownership of this. We need a plan, like an actual plan. What we're going to do, here's what's going to happen, here's how we're going to do it, stick with it, and either level the place, go invade somewhere, do whatever it is that we're going to do it, and just and finish it.
Yeah.
And Nathan, whether we establish something or not, like, we do it and finish whatever it is that is said.
To your point, Nathan, we'll link to that 3.5 minute video from Jocko, because I think it's worth watching, where he's like, hey, just own the mistake. Tell everybody that if you interfere with our mission, we will kill you, and get out everybody who's worth getting out. Like, that seems like a reasonable course of action to me, other than this like half retreat. It's to Robbie's point, the one Yeezy, the one black dress shoe is like, we're kind of acting like Afghanistan is half pregnant now. Okay, we've decided to leave. That was the decision of our commander in chief. And if that's the decision, let's leave, but let's do it as peacefully as possible, which unfortunately also probably means the use of force to get our people out there if you mess with them. And Robbie, I'll let you get the last thought on this, because you have some interesting thoughts on, we're gone, we're leaving. You believe that's the right thing to do. Let's also immigrate as many people as possible who want to come here. You mentioned that in the Facebook post that I thought was really good. So maybe you can, close with that thought. We'll get some final thoughts and then wrap this up.
Yeah, I mean, I think this speaks to my larger worldview too. And, we talked about why we even want an airfield in Afghanistan. I think that's a mistake. I think it's a mistake that we think we need to balance every region. And I understand the idea that we would want to have control of Afghanistan, but I think the better choice, and the thing nobody talks about, and we haven't even talked about tonight, is how much this was a proxy war between 2 nuclear powers, India and Pakistan. Afghanistan is a proxy war between 2 countries that both have nuclear weapons, and that should scare the shit out of us.
And they both hate each other, by the way.
And they both hate each other. China's involved. Why are we the natural counterbalance there? Because we've handcuffed Japan since World War II to not militarize. And we need to take the shackles off of Japan. We need to get closer to Japan diplomatically. We need to get closer to India diplomatically. And instead of sending our sons and daughters to Afghanistan to bleed and die for a region that is nowhere near us, we should support allies who make sense in the region to counterbalance the forces that we know are bad in that region. And I also think, what we're trying to do, what Rumsfeld, what McChrystal, what all these people said we could roll into Afghanistan, we could roll into Iraq because we have government in a box. That's their line. That's not my line. They have government in a box that we can deploy at any time and make any of these countries into a Western-style democracy. And it's just absolutely goddamn insane. And I think you think of, we go back to Helmand province and the supporting warlords and police chiefs who are raping kids, all of the compromises that we make to beat back the Taliban that lose our credibility as America, as what America stands for. What does America stand for to the average Afghan? I can't imagine. There's some people who have benefited. There's some people who get it. I'm sure there's some people who understand, who read deeply into the literature and who get it. But for the average person, I can't imagine they have a good opinion of what America stands for. And what I want is for us to stop thinking that we can take these ideas of freedom, these American ideals, the idea of the American dream, and that we can impose it at the point of a gun. So what should we do? I think it starts with bringing in anybody who's stood up for America in foreign countries and is now in danger because of it, and bringing them to America, bringing them in. And those people become emissaries for America, because do you know what? They don't cut all ties with people back home. They still talk to them. They send remittances. They send letters. They have Zoom calls. And when those people talk about how horrible America is, these people we bring in, they can convincingly tell people on the ground better than any propaganda campaign we can dream up of. They can tell them, no, this is what America's about. This is the American dream. These are American values. And we need to bring in as many of our allies as possible, as many of our interpreters, as many people who stuck their necks out for coalition forces at the threat of being killed by the Taliban. And this applies to places all over the area. I think we can draw down from some of these endless bases and never-ending wars. And the American birth rate is going down and down and down. I mean, China's regretting its one-child policy. We don't have to have a policy. We're having one child per person. We're going to have the same problems. We need people in anyway. So let's bring them in, and let's let them export our democracy to their friends and families by experiencing it here and letting them know what it's really about, instead of going to foreign lands and compromising and defending people who rape little boys and saying this is what America's about. That is a failing strategy to spread freedom. I don't see how that ever works. But if we just want to let people in and experience America and tell people what it's all about, that's what's going to make us the city on a hill, as Reagan called it. That's what's going to make us a beacon to the rest of the world. To have people come in and say, oh my God, there are opportunities here like you wouldn't believe. And this is despite the past couple of years we've gone through with people, talking about racism, which, yes, obviously it's always still a problem. But do you know who doesn't think it's a problem in America? People from other countries, because other countries are way more racist than we are. And you want to point to a country that's less racist to the United States? I promise it's a homogenous country that is just one ethnicity. And I can't ever think that compromising our morals and telling people that our ideals are right at the point of a gun is ever going to be as effective as just letting them come and experience it and telling their friends and families about it.
Man, I love that a lot. I wish you guys were here in person. I know you can hear Robbie's passion over the Zoom, but if you saw his hands and his shoulders, what he was doing right now, he's like fired up. He's like, he wants to go immigrate some people right now himself. And I want to close on a couple thoughts. First of all, I want to thank you guys so much for being here. I know some of this is either hard to talk about or easy to talk about, or maybe brings back some thoughts that are better left unsaid. And I always like to finish the talk with like, what's the question I forgot to ask? And this might be about your time in service. This might be about your time in country. This might be about some, massive geopolitical thought. I had the benefit of kind of parsing through Robbie's thought as he wrote a 17-paragraph synopsis on Afghanistan that I shared on Facebook. But, Sean, maybe I'll start with you. Either something I forgot to ask, or something that's positive for the audience to think through when it comes to, you know, thinking about Afghanistan and these people and what we could have done, should do in the future? I'll just leave the parting thought to you, and then Nathan and Robbie on kind of like, what's the question? You're like, damn, I've been meaning to get to this the whole talk, and Scott forgot to ask the question. So what is that question?
Well, maybe the questions have already been asked, but a couple of things I don't think I got an opportunity to jump in on earlier. So, you know, Robbie, absolutely, you know, agree with a lot of that, you know, especially your passion. You know, I mean, in order for us to continue to be, you know, a world power, you know, we have to be probably two things, right? A really good friend and a really formidable and awful enemy. And right now, we have those reversed. We're a really good enemy and we're a really shitty friend. Like, how many of our allies have we just left out to dry over and over and over again for the past, you know, decades? Hong Kong, Cuba, I mean, Syria, Kurds, you just keep going on and on and on. So, you know, I love the idea about bringing in folks who really understand and, you know, would appreciate more than it seems like half the country at this point, you know, what our true ideals are and what that means. You know, I think to me, Afghanistan and the whole kind of staying there is really less and less about Afghanistan itself. It is, to me, more about the broader geopolitical thing. I think it's a great point about India. I think the problem is that we've made that so much worse, where China is working with Afghanistan now. They're going to have the, you know, economic pipeline. Pakistan has already legitimized and made agreements with the Taliban. So now you have China, Afghanistan, Pakistan surrounding essentially India. India is, I'm sure, just, you know, completely, you know, just on edge. Very, very interesting point, you know, about, you know, Japan and just helping our other allies kind of do their part, essentially. You know, but I think just operating from, you know, a realistic perspective is, yeah, I think kind of the foundation of my viewpoint. And, you know, if we aren't doing some of these things, or if we're not keeping things in check in certain places, and certainly we can't be everywhere all at once, you know, nature and politics and all this stuff abhors a vacuum, right? And as soon as there's a vacuum, it's going to be filled, and it's usually going to be filled by, you know, the worst folks, right? So now China's moving in. You know, we've probably given all of South Asia essentially over to China. You know, there's going to be huge ripple and domino effects from this. So again, I can, you know, liberate and change completely Afghanistan, no. But I think we had a door, you know, an opportunity to kind of, you know, be there, keep things in check at a relatively low cost. But you know, we'll certainly kind of see how things go. So where do we go from here? Yeah, I mean, if we aren't already paying off the Taliban to try to allow safe passage for our folks, you know, out of there, we sure will be. If we are paying them now, we're going to be paying them more, because we're not going to meet that August 31st deadline. We're going to get, you know, the prisoners in orange jumpsuits about, you know, ready to get their heads cut off and all that kind of stuff. You know, I think, unfortunately, and I think, you know, the enemy, the Taliban, knows. I mean, what are we going to do? I mean, what? So one of the things I don't think we've kind of hit on is, you know, to me, it boggles my mind how we just continue to try to treat the Taliban as if they're just some legitimate government, as if there's some, you know, group of Westerners. You know, they keep talking about, well, the Taliban has to decide what place they want to have in the world. Is like, they've already decided they are terrorists. Like, that is who they are. So that kind of stuff just, you know, really kind of boggles my mind as well. But I think final point, you know, as far as you know, it's kind of like money is fungible. I think terrorism is fungible, right? So, you know, the Taliban wasn't the ones who came over and attacked us on 9/11. They harbored Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda was able to come over, right? So the Taliban can have their kind of, you know, regional aspirations, but all they have to do is let in Al-Qaeda or, you know, ISIS, which, you know, apparently is, you know, coming back in the region, all that kind of stuff, for that stuff to, you know, again, kind of rapidly find our shores and everything. And I think fundamentally, those types of folks will not rest. I understand hey, you're in our area, you're in Saudi Arabia, but I just personally believe that those types of fundamentalists will get that, and then they'll start to attack anyways. It's not going to be enough. There's the same people that cry death to Israel, the same people, death to America. It's just it's not going to stop. So we need to just start operating within reality.
Well, let's divert them. Let's divert them to aiming their activities at their fellow Muslim brothers and sisters in Xinjiang in China, which is much closer and a much more achievable goal. Make them China's problem. I think we can take steps that make them more of a regional player. They have enough regional issues to deal with.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting point. I think the only thing I would say is I don't know if they care enough. China obviously doesn't care about that the Taliban are a bunch of murderers. They're just going to take from them and get what they want. I think it might happen just vice versa, where they're willing to kind of maybe even look the other way. But yeah, I mean, who knows? So anyways, very, very interesting stuff. I certainly enjoyed the conversation and being able to share my perspective, and absolutely loved hearing from everybody here. So thank you for the opportunity. Really, really appreciate it.
And Nathan, I'll give you the final word, man. What's the question I forgot to ask, or the thing you want to get off your chest that's relevant to your service, your time in country, or where you think this whole shit show is going?
Yeah, I'll end it on a little bit more of a sentimental value, which is kind of like we talked about before. People need to not be so ignorant, and then I love the word ignorant because I don't use it as racist, more like educate yourself. So what we've had here today for 3 hours or however long this ends up being is 4 veterans. I think we actually have all 4 branches of the military, 4 different MOSs, 4 different perspectives. And as an average American citizen, take time to talk to vets about what's going on and actually hear it. And I say vets as in plural. Don't talk to one, because when you get one, you're going to pinhole your experience. You're going to pinhole, what you think about it. So talk to people about it if you actually care. And that's another thing too, is don't post. This is America. Post whatever you want. That's your right. But don't sit here and post all these stupid things just because you want to look like a good person. Because a lot of what people are posting right now is just complete bullshit. It's posting what they think other people want to see, and it's kind of like it's a like attraction, right? Or it's everyone just wants to bump their social status up or something by trying to use what's a hot topic right now. Because I always talk about Haiti. Haiti is freaking demolished right now, but you don't see anything about that. And the last thing I'm going to say is, even if it can come from me or any of us that have been over to this country, that's experienced the atrocities that have happened over here, that's seen the worst of the worst, much like frontline workers with COVID. Not every Afghan is Taliban. Not every brown person is a terrorist. So there's a documentary that's out right now, Eye for an Eye, about 9/11, this guy that went on a mass murdering spree, killing all kinds of brown people after 9/11. Don't be so ignorant. Don't be that ignorant asshole that goes out there thinking that just because the Taliban are taking over and you see somebody with a turban or see someone in whatever, that they're automatically some kind of terrorist or Taliban or something, because that's such an ignorant and arrogant ass American perspective that we have. And unfortunately, I see it way too much. So educate yourself on things that are going on. Talk to the people that actually have the experience, and just don't be so stupid.
That's the way to end the podcast, man. Tell people not to be stupid.
I co-sign that.
Yeah. I think everybody co-signs that, man. And obviously this is a developing situation. We're recording this on Monday. By the time we release it on Thursday, everything could have changed. Who knows? Maybe Biden takes advice from Jocko. Maybe things escalate or de-escalate. I don't even know if that's a word, quickly. So, I'd love to keep you guys on tap to do a follow-up, maybe not a 3-hour marathon, but just a quick check-in, a week, 2 weeks, a month, a year from now, And man, I really appreciate you guys' service, and I appreciate you guys deeply for the time that you put into the military, into your time in country in Afghanistan, and then also just taking the time for this podcast.
Can I say one more thing?
I guess.
All right.
And by the way, to be clear, Nathan, we don't represent every branch of service because, like, who cares about the Navy?
No, Nathan represents both. Yes. Nathan represents both.
That's true. Yeah. That's true.
He's a Marine and he represents his bus driver.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's super quick. It's just, if any other vets are listening, check in on your homies.
Yeah.
That's my number one thing. I mean, as bad as the casualties we've taken a lot more to suicides, and this Afghanistan thing has hit a lot of people hard. So check in on your people.
Cool, man. All right. Thanks, guys. Nathan, go to bed. Sean, go spend time with your family, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks all.
Guys.
Bye.
Yep. Take care.